All right. Fantastic start. Well, second day of the week. But first day of the week for the Prospect Podcast this week. We have a great guest with us today, Coach Chase out of Orange Beach High School in Alabama. Uh, Unbelievable. I mean, the word legendary is what I would use, but he'll probably be too humble for that. So, tremendous winning coach, tremendous amount of success in girls basketball down there on the beaches of Alabama and that Gulf Coast area. But before we talk to Coach, we have Coach D as well with us as always. To my left today, sometimes on my right, sometimes to my left, and I'm Coach Schumann. So we're excited to get into it with Coach today. Coach has won way over 500 ball games as a basketball coach. Tremendous amount of success, league championships, state level championships. He's an unbelievable basketball coach. And what he's done down there and on the Gulf Shore area of Alabama is really unprecedented. And the success he has had is phenomenal at the high school level. He's a tremendous leader, and he's really empowered a lot of young women to really become very successful, not just on the field but off as well. And he's now started to, as we talked in the pre-show a little bit, started taking some of that to social media and spreading the word there. And I'm sure that's how Derek discovered him in one way, shape,
Yeah,
or form. And so we're excited to talk about all that kind of stuff as well. But welcome, Coach, to the Prospect Podcast.
Great to be here.
Coach, if you could dive into your career as a coach, I obviously briefly touched on it, but it's unbelievable what you have done and the pace you are on from a success standpoint is unbelievable. As a guy who coached football for a long time, uh, when you hear the numbers of wins that you have, it's just like so daunting. You know what I mean? And it's a tribute to not just your success but your longevity as well within the program and continued success. Talk about your career, how you got started, all that kind of stuff, and where you got to your point now at Orange Beach.
Okay, so I grew up in Northwest Ohio, a little town called Delta, about 30 miles west of Toledo. Midwestern guy, real small town. We only had two or three stoplights in our town. And so my stepdad was a coach at the school. He was a head baseball coach for over 20 years. Then he became a principal. Then he was a superintendent. And so growing up in that town, all of the teachers, all the coaches, all hung out, after football games, after basketball games, and all that stuff. And I saw what that life was like. And I knew I always wanted to be a coach and a teacher. But then when I saw the camaraderie that those coaches had and what they were trying to do and all that stuff, there was really no doubt from the time I was probably a sophomore or junior in high school that I wanted to follow in all those people's footsteps. And so I went to college. I originally went to a small little D2 school to play football, Ashland University in the Central Ohio. Got hurt, couldn't play football anymore. Transferred, ended up graduating from Bowling Green State University. And then I started coaching while I was still in college. I started coaching varsity football. I started coaching JV boys basketball when I was 20 years old. At one point, I really thought that I was going to be a head football coach. Football was I was probably farther in a coaching track to do that, and so I got a job. I started teaching and coaching, and I'm kind of a control freak. And when I actually started interviewing for head football jobs. I became an offensive coordinator at a small little school up in the Cleveland area, Kirtland, Ohio, and so I started interviewing for some football jobs. And as I started getting into the coaching realm, the head coaching realm, or thoughts of being a head coach, I thought to myself, man, to be a successful football coach, you really need to have a lot of assistant coaches all on the same page in order for you to be successful.
Right.
And as I was on staffs, And, and I was listening to, your DB's coach, your linebackers coach, your D line coach, and all this stuff, and all the varying opinions they had of the head coach and how hard it was to get it wasn't about getting the kids on the same page. It was about getting the adults on the same page.
That is
And
that's the hardest
So
part. Yeah.
the
and then
hardest part.
if you had a successful, coordinator or successful position coach, they wanted to be out the door and be gone,
Yeah.
and so I was also coaching basketball. I really loved coaching basketball at the time. And but I started to realize that I could do more in basketball by myself and not have to rely on that many adults to be as successful as
Mhm.
I was going to be a football coach. And so it was really kind of a unique situation. I went down to visit a buddy of mine in Florida. I was 26. I'd been teaching and coaching a little bit, and I was out on the golf course where most things happen. And I was golfing with one of his buddies who was a principal at Palmetto High School, which is sandwiched in between
Yep.
Bradenton and St. Pete, and I'm sorry, Bradenton and Sarasota. And he was like, "Hey, you want to come down here and teach and coach?" And I was like, "Great." I was, grew up in the gray skies of Ohio, and I was like, "Yeah, let's move to the beach." So I ended up moving to the beach, and I got down there, and I was 26 years old. The girls' basketball coach left in like September to go take a JUCO job. Well, when school starts and teaching and coaching positions come open, they don't have a lot of options because everything's cyclical. And I was I was a head freshman football coach for our AD down there, Bob Bowling, and he came up to me. He's like, "Hey," he said, "we've interviewed about 6 or 7 people for this girls' basketball job." He said, I don't like any of them." He said, "Do you want to be our girls' basketball coach?" And I was like, "Well, heck yeah, let's do it."
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was 30 years ago. And that was what really got me started. And ever since then, it's been a love and a passion of mine. I've dabbled in, coaching football at different places. I've coached other sports, golf and track and those kind of things. But basketball, has been my number one for 30 years. So that's kind of my journey to that. And and I'm probably not going to stop anytime soon. So
That's phenomenal. It's so interesting hearing like how you became, especially being from the football world. It's interesting because I was a head coach for 13 of the 20 years I was coaching football, and that is always the toughest thing as a football coach is like figuring out the right mix in your staff. And I've gone through many different things over time. So as someone who does also like to have control, I feel how it is. Coaching girls basketball, it seems like it was a great opportunity for you to kind of put your stamp on the program, less parties to be involved, and then have the ability to create the program in kind of in your image. Talk about how you from the time you took over the girls program, like how you started that process.
you know, I guess just leaned on the coaches, not necessarily in basketball, but leaned on the coaches, and the lessons that I learned as a player. And then, as I was coaching, and, my high school coach, my high school basketball coach, Bruce Smith, who's, pretty legendary in Northwest Ohio, was at Toledo Whitmer for a super long time. And, he was, I actually, there's two ways I think that you coach basketball. I think that I coach basketball more like a football coach. And here's my analogy to that. So I'm coaching football at my high school, Delta High School, and everybody was running the veer and the option and wing tee and all those things. And so everything was assignment football. And I just remember sitting on the board with our head coach, and we're going through and we're playing the 4-4, and we're playing a guy named Joe Roebuck from Bryan High School, who got drafted by the Yankees out of high school. So you can imagine the kind of athlete that he was. And he's coming down, and we're on the board, and he's like, all right, we got the dive covered with our middle. All right, outside linebacker is going to get the quarterback. Okay, our corner's going to come up. We got it covered. And I looked at him and I said, Coach Warblow, I said, I get what you're saying. We have a man for each one. I said, but Brian Welch, our outside linebacker, is never going to tackle Joe Roebuck. And, and so there's in basketball, I think there's schemes and then there's matchups. And I've always coached basketball in kind of the Bill Belichick of, this week we're going to take away this running back. This week we're going to double this wide receiver, because we need to make them do something that they don't want to do. We need to make other people beat us. Don't let your best player beat us. And so from a basketball perspective, I don't necessarily say, my European ball screen action or my flex action or my horns action is going to be better than you. Mine is, how can I get my best player on your worst player? Or how can I get this matchup and we're going to win that matchup? And so, I kind of use my football brain to coach basketball. And that's kind of how I do it.
It makes a lot of sense, Coach. Look, I think it's one of those things too. And look, we all try to do it, right? With X's and O's, and how do we expose your weakness, right? And that's what the good teams do. The good teams, find your weakness quick, and then they just keep that throttle right on it, right?
That's right.
It's and that's really what it is. And within football, it's a little bit more difficult, obviously, because you're working with more moving parts, right? You got 11 people, and only one of them is going to make the actual play, but nobody looks at, well, the ball has to go from the center quarterback to the running back or to the receiver, right? There's those pieces that can go, and the exposing of, right, because every offensive coach should, or at least, in my philosophy, the way you look at it is, look at the defense. What are they not good at overall? Because everybody has a weakness some way, shape, or form, right? It's just a matter of how weak is that weakness, right? Or which individual over there is not like some of the rest, and now you go and expose that. And then that's one way of doing it, right? The other way, like you were saying, is, okay, this is my system, right? I run the Delaware wing tee, and we're going to run it better than they do, better than it doesn't matter what they do. We are going to do what we do and be so good at it that it doesn't matter, right? And that's
100%.
It's kind of, for me, it's kind of a happy medium of both. And, some guys are all in one way, some guys are all in another. But with basketball, I could only imagine now there's less people, right?
100%.
I'm sure with girls, it's different in the fact that athleticism, I'm sure, comes into a bigger role, right, in terms of that, especially high school girls. And look, like my alma mater, my high school, small school, but it was football and then it was girls basketball. Those were the two programs within the state or within our school that were like top notch, right? And look, all the girls basketball, the assistant was a football coach, right? It's just how it kind of worked. I think football coaches, Dave, and we talk about this all the time, right? Football coaches can coach any sport, irregardless of whether they have the actual knowledge of that sport or not. We can learn that now, especially with social media and how those kind of things, like we can go to clinics, we can learn it all. But when it comes to football, you're just dealing with a mass of human beings, a mass of student athletes with an array of personalities, an array of physical capabilities or incapabilities, right? And to get all of those moving parts, to just get on a bus, have water, and be at the game is a whole different task, right? Other than like within that. So for you to relate your football background to coaching, right, a different sport, okay, and girls at the same time, right? Just kind of like sums it all up. What have you
Right.
seen as the biggest difference between, going from coaching football to coaching girls basketball, right? Like what's the biggest, obviously we understand it's a sport and it's that. What is the biggest difference between the two, and how do you take that and make it as successful as you have within your program itself, girls specifically?
Well, I think the first thing is, you know, I don't treat my girls as girls. I treat my girls as athletes. You probably heard a lot of girls coaches say that. And,
Yep.
I'll be honest with you. I'm a big weight room guy. I'm a big conditioning guy. And so like, our kids, basketball is a physical sport, probably the most physical sport that a girl can play. And and so we spend a ton of time in the weight room.
It's awesome.
We challenge them. We're squatting, we're benching, we're cleaning, we're doing all of those types of things. They know what their numbers are, and they're striving to. We post them on
Yeah.
our window, and and they're trying to. We have what's called a speed and strength award. Where we take their numbers, and then at the end of the year, we give them an award for praising them for being the strongest, being the fittest, that we can have. That's one thing. I know that probably a little bit more of a difference, from the coaching, and not necessarily sports, but coaching girls and guys, is right now girls are gonna. I've coached very few girls in 30 years that played just for the love of basketball. They love two things. They love a relationship with a coach, or they love a relationship with their team, or teammate, or multiple members of their team. And so the best teams that I've had have had that. We won a state championship in 2018, and then we won a state championship, a 7A championship in 2020. And those teams were, so connected. They were connected to me, and then they were connected to each other. And, I've had other teams that have had, a ton of talent, probably state championship level talent. But maybe me and that player that was very influential on that team didn't have a great connection, or maybe they just didn't, the teammates that needed to be connected on that team weren't connected. And and so I watch a lot of things, and Alan Stein Jr. has on his, he's a big basketball motivational speaker, and one of the things he says he puts on his wall is believe or leave, and that kind of stuff. And they've done studies on the amount of belief that teams have within each other, and of the coach and the system and all that stuff. And those, when everything else is equal, the team that believes in each other is going to be the one that's going to win that. And and I feel like this year, my this year's group, a lot of really great girls, really want to be good at basketball. But I have a great relationship with them. My wife is, my assistant here. She runs my middle school, and then she coaches my JV, and she coaches with me on the varsity level, and she has a great connection with them. And then we have a group of kids that are super connected. And so I really think we're going to have a good year, just for the fact that they want to play well for me and play well for us, but they want to play well for each other. And I think that goes across all sports, but I think that girls need that more than guys. Look, I played sports, and I remember there was a couple guys on the team that I could have fist fought, on a daily basis. But when we
Oh
lined up to
God.
play,
Yeah.
when we lined up to play another team, all that stuff went out the window.
Absolutely.
I was gonna rebound, and I was gonna do my job. I was gonna make that tackle. I was gonna make that run. I was gonna make that block. I was gonna do whatever that took. You know, that didn't affect my play. That didn't affect my ability to be a great member of that team. But girls, it does not work like that. And, and so we really try to foster a lot of, camaraderie, team chemistry, leadership, communication, all those types of things, as much as the weight room and the shooting and the ball handling and all that stuff.
No doubt about it. I haven't coached girl athletes in a long time. I used to coach track with them back in early 2000s, and I always felt that girls love that camaraderie, that the
They love
difference
that.
between I mean, boys like it, but in a different way. Like, girls need to be connected to each other. When they go to a different level, and
Oh yeah.
whereas boys want to feel like they're part of something, but there's a different level of motivation within the team aspects that's different. Like, if girls feel like they're on the outside, they sometimes
Oof.
don't play as well, right? If they feel like they're a part of that group, they play a lot better. And if other girls pick them up, when maybe they're having a bad day before a game, that makes a big difference. And I think that's a really unique thing. I've always found that in the 5 years I coached girl athletes, and haven't coached them even now, sometimes when I coach girls flag and stuff,
Oh yeah.
they respond really well to the relationship part with the other athletes, and they want the coach also to know that that the coach believes in them. That's a big deal. Now, boys obviously want you to believe in them too, but sometimes you could
It's
do
different.
different
It is.
levels of kicking in the pants to get what you want out of them. I think girls, you have to be very selective in how you do it, and when you do it, how it affects the team. You know what I mean? So if you came down on Jane over here, how does that affect the other four girls who really are big fans of Jane, right?
100%.
Because that might affect their play if they feel like you've come down on them unfairly. Now, if they feel like it was needed, then they could pick each other up, and then so I think it's a very, very interesting thing. And I mean, I'm always fascinated, and obviously as a women's basketball coach, you're probably very familiar. But I went to school at UConn, and Gino Ariema was the coach when I was playing football there in the 90s, and obviously still the coach to this day. And I always I find him to be among, if not the best leader in sports, definitely in the top 2 or 3 in all of sports. And he's done it as a male coach in a female sport, probably predominantly coached head coach wise by females.
Sure.
And if you look around them, the majority of coaches, maybe not when he started, but now, 20, 25, 30 years later, it's mostly female run, the teams, and he still gets a tremendous amount of success out of the girl athletes by demanding a certain thing, but understanding the camaraderie that they have. And having been friends with a lot of girls that played on the girls basketball team at UConn, and still friends with some to this day, it's amazing how he's able to foster those relationships. At the same time that he was, I mean, boy, he was tough. I mean, like, a lot of people would be like, wow, like he's tougher than you would expect, but you see the results, and you see how much they respect him. So I think it's really, really cool. The way that, and this is one of my big things with, like, how important girls sports is, like, and not to get political, but how important it is for girls to be playing girl sports and not having men and girl sports and all that kind of stuff. And I don't even know how you feel about any of that stuff, but just from my standpoint, that's a place where girls can compete with each other as teammates and compete against other people. And that's a space for them. Just like for boys, when they play with each other, they want to play with other males and compete with other males. And I think it's a great thing. And I think that it's amazing what you're doing. I'd love for you to talk about, because I how you really developed the camaraderie and discipline to get what you need out of your girl athletes every single year? Because you said, you know, you have a system that you kind of follow, and Derek talked about how, you know, obviously in football there's many different ways to skin the cat. You can be system oriented, player oriented, you know, however, you know, this flexibility as far as how, you know, you adapt to. You're focused on doing what you guys do well. What do you how have you built that part of it and gotten the buy-in from the girls?
I don't want to, number one, I don't want to compare myself. Gino is amazing.
Yeah.
I've watched,
I'm not comparing.
but I've watched, I study coaches. I
Yep.
study Nick Saban. I study Gino. I study, you know, all of these coaches in all these
That's
different
a good bell.
aspects. Yeah, in all these different aspects. And I think that knowledge, and I think that, you know, consistency, and I think that, you know, being able to communicate effectively and all those things go into it. But I also think that there's a part of a coach's personality, male, female, doesn't matter what you're coaching. I call it the it factor. And here's what I mean. Okay, so, you know, Nick Saban grew up, he's 5'8". I've met him personally. You know, he played in the Mid-American Conference at Kent State, you
Yep.
know. And here's a guy, and you know, I was in Birmingham for 25 years, so I was right down the road, you know, when he was in Tuscaloosa. You know, he was at the University of Toledo, he was at Michigan State, you know, back when I was up there and that kind of stuff. And I would watch him. And I was at a school, Clay Chalkville High School, for 10 years, and we were churning out SEC players and winning state championships, and guys were going to play for him and going to the pros and going to all these places. And here's this little 5'8" guy who would roll in a Mercedes, and he would have these 6'6", you know, 5-star, 4-star athletes, and they would fall over themselves for this guy. And he never played in the pros, you know, played Mid-American Conference football. And he had this factor that these guys looked at him and said, I want to listen to everything he does. I want to do everything he does. And if I do it, he's going to be the ticket to a greater life for me, whether it's in sports, whether it's in education or whatever. And I think, you know, and again, I think that whatever it is I do, the consistency, the discipline, the knowledge, the belief in what the program I'm presenting them, like I don't think you can be in this business for 30 years, which I've been, and not have something that the way I deliver my program to them, they say, I'll go out and I'll run around the track at 95-degree heat. I'll go run gassers across the turf in August. I'm a girl, and I'm going to go lift 4 days a week, and I'm going to bench press and squat. And when I got, you know, 155 on there, and he comes over and says, hey, let's put 10 more pounds on it. You got this, baby. That they do it, you know? And so I think that there's people out there that probably have more knowledge, that have more, you know, this, that, or the other. But for some reason, they can't get that message through and get their kids to what every coach wants, the buy-in. And I've not always, look, I've had 30 years, I've had some teams that I did not reach,
Right.
you know, and that kind of stuff. But for the most part, you know, I've been able to, you know, go in, build a program at a different school, and get them to the point to where I can get a 9th grade girl or a 10th grade girl to run through the proverbial brick wall
Right.
and not, and put all this time in and not be able to guarantee them what the result's going to be at the end. And so that's why I love what I do. I love, um, the build up. I love the process. I would hate to be a collegiate coach right now, because the one thing that I would loved, and the one thing that you guys probably loved and all that stuff was, you put your team together and you go, okay, man, I got these promising freshmen. Okay, well, I'm gonna watch them develop into sophomores, and then this guy's gonna graduate. I'm gonna plug this piece in and all that stuff. And now it's like, it doesn't matter if you're talking Power 4 football, Power 4 basketball, or whatever. It's like you got 12, 15 guys on a basketball roster, and next year you've got 10 new guys. It's like you're just coaching team to team. They got more stability in the NFL and the NBA and those kind of things with contracts and
Sure.
collective bargaining and all that stuff than they do college football. Like I love the fact that I've got one senior and the rest of my kids are, I got two juniors, and then I got a really good freshman class, and I'm so excited to watch them like play their freshman year, have a role, develop, and then two guys graduate, and now you're plugging the pieces in, and what's my middle school doing? Like, I love that process. And and I would hate, like I said, to be at Kentucky basketball, or be at, North Carolina football and be Bill Belichick, and you're coaching a group of guys, and next year 40 of those guys are going to be gone, and you're going to have 40 new guys in, and it's like that's not fun for me.
No doubt about it. And I think that, from your standpoint,
Spot on.
correct me if I'm wrong, you're invested, right, in the girls and their success. And you're a constant learner. So those two things, like, I always feel like kids can tell if you're invested, and they can tell way better than adults, by the way, which I always find amazing, right? Because adults should have more wisdom and all those kind of things, but there's a lot of other factors involved for adults too, as well, because they're worried about their job, not just their kids. They're worried about handling the whole family, so they may not have the same laser focus as to what's going on within, let's say, the basketball program, right? Whereas the girls that are playing for you are really laser focused. As soon as they end school, they're going over to you, right? And maybe they're thinking about it throughout their day, right? So I think that laser focus allows them to understand, hey, this person is invested in helping me succeed. This person is pushing me to be my best. And yes, he goes to figure out, and he constant reader, constant learner, to be able to figure out what might help, these little nuances that might help me get better within the process, these little nuances. And I always think that kids, especially when they kind of fall off that wagon, sometimes something doesn't go their way, that always brings them back, right? Like, you could bring them back when they kind of, I don't know, having a bad week, or had a bad game, or you got on them for something. The fact that they know that you're invested in them and you're trying to help them can always bring them back onto the ship and get it right in their back in the right direction. And they're willing to listen to it. One of the things I always say is, you can see how good a coach is, not just when they're winning, right? Because when they're winning, or, sometimes you might have a great athletic group, right? And everything you roll out there is magic, right? And but as a coach, that it's how you handle them when they struggle, or when they maybe lose a game, or
Sure.
and how you handle them from that aspect and get them back on the right path, because that's always the biggest thing to me as to what helps coaches, right? And obviously, long term, you're judged on your wins versus your losses. But it's those times when you lose a game, it's those times where someone has a bad game, that after you may have to coach them through some certain things, or the game's over the next day, you go over to them, or maybe after the game, you go after them and say, hey, listen, we're going to fix this, or we're going to get this corrected. And you'll see next week, you'll see the improvement. I think that's what really, and I think girls buy into that even better than boys.
So
Boys,
much.
to me, have
Oh,
been
yeah.
sometimes could be a harder sell on that, right? Because
Damn right.
especially if they're used to having a lot of success, like girls, it's because it's how we treat boys as a whole growing up. That they have to be tough and all that kind of stuff. Girls grow up a little bit differently, and that's a good thing, by the way. They grow up a little differently. That's a good thing, and
Absolutely.
and that allows them to kind of adapt to that and be able to respond to it. Talk about some instances where you really found that you kind of had to go into the well of your investment and understanding of the girls in order to get them to where you wanted to be, or some challenges you guys had to overcome.
I mean, I think the first thing again is, like kind of like what I said before, this is so I was in Birmingham for 25 years, and Orange Beach is a small little, so in Alabama, there's 7 classifications, 1 being the smallest, 7 being the largest. So I was at a school, Clay Chalkable, for 10 years, and then I was at Spain Park for 14 years. Both of those were the largest school classification. So I always coached at the top of the food chain, I guess you could say. And when you're coaching and you have your school of 1,500 kids, or a school of 1,800 kids, or whatever it was, you're going to be able to find kids that are going to be really invested, and kind of your dogs. You know what I'm saying? And so Orange Beach was recently built, and they were a county school, and then they broke away from the county and they formed their own school system because, look, we have a lot of tax dollars here because we have a ton of people that come down and visit Orange Beach and
Right.
stay, and we get a lot of revenue. And so by breaking
Yeah.
away from
Fall in love with
breaking
yeah.
yeah, breaking away from Baldwin County, then they were able to create their own coaching supplements, build their own facilities, and all that stuff. Like, we're just opening a $47 million athletic facility, new stadium, new track, new 2-story field house with we have I saw it the other day, I think it was TCU or something, has the weight room with all the cameras, and they go in and they punch the Alabama has it. They go in, they punch their name up, it shows them their reps, and when they're squatting or benching, it shows a green check, it shows a red X if they ain't going deep enough, or if they're going deep enough, if they're going too fast, if they're going too slow. Like I said, we're a 4A school, so we're middle of the pack. We have about 100 kids per grade level, so we have about 400 kids in our high school, and we have the same weight room facilities that they have at Alabama and TCU and all that stuff. Now, we aren't in there yet, but we're going to pass inspection, I think, next week. We've been on our football field, we've been on our track. We have a 60-yard covered indoor turf to practice, and then we built a brand new gym, 94-foot court, which a lot of schools don't have down here. New offices, new locker rooms, 4-sided scoreboard, jumbotrons. I mean, all the bells and whistles that you could want. And so when they committed to all this stuff, basically the principal, said, well, we want to match our facilities with coaches. And so, the principal, who was a friend of mine who had came down here, he reached out and was like, look, we want you to leave a school that you just have won a couple state championships with, and we want you to come down here and build a program. And my wife was coaching at a school, and we wanted to coach together. The school I was at didn't have an opportunity for her to do that. I'm like, well, I want full control of
Here
the
it is.
basketball pro. I want full control of the basketball program, and I want a job for my wife so my wife and I can work together and all that stuff. And they're like, done deal, get your butt down here. And since that point, they've hired me. Our boys basketball coach at Spain Park, where I was. and then he came down a year after I did. And so they've hired a lot of coaches from the Birmingham area to come down, and really in the state of Alabama, like everything is centralized in the Birmingham area is where your best schools and your best coaches are.
Yep.
Huntsville is very similar. As you get south towards the coast, the programs in all levels. Now, don't get me wrong. You still have, some football teams and some softball teams and some baseball teams, but in general, the sports programs in the South are not quite as good as they are central and north. And so what Orange Beach said is we're going to invest in facilities. Now we're going to invest in coaches. And so I guess to go back to your question is like, what are some of the struggles? It was easier for me when I was at a 7A school to get my kids to run through a brick wall because I had a big chunk of kids to choose from. Now that I've been here and this starts my 3rd year here at Orange Beach, like I'm battling multi-sport athletes. I'm battling, kids playing volleyball, then playing basketball, then playing softball, and then also having to go and compete, and try to win that time, while they're doing all those things and still being able to go across the state and compete with schools that, are right now are just better than we are.
What is that? What is the challenge of that? So if you have athletes that are multi-sport, how do you manage that within the school? Because obviously that's part of maybe what makes the school go, that you have multi-sport athletes that play a lot of different sports. Well, how do you set your programs so you work around that at the same time that you're getting them developed?
Yeah. So, part of it is, and I'll tell you, and I know I've looked at some of the lists that you've had of some of the shows and stuff you've done, and I know you've done some stuff with AAU and some travel stuff,
Yep.
and 7-on-7 and that kind of stuff. The conflict that we have as high school coaches isn't as much with the other high school coaches that are coaching those sports. It's the club coaches that don't have any affiliation with us. And so basketball season is October to first week of March.
Right.
Well, if you're playing club volleyball, you start club volleyball in January. If you're playing, I've got an elite level softball player, and right now, every weekend right now, she's in Oklahoma, she's in Arkansas, she's in Texas A&M, and even when we start our regular practices October 20th, she's going to be leaving on Friday and going to be gone the whole weekend because either her travel team is playing in Colorado or California, or she's in an elite camp for a weekend at Florida or something like that. So really the sports seasons within the coaches isn't as bad as me trying to battle club soccer, travel softball, travel club volleyball. Those are the things that really make it tough, for me to build my program, because those people are constantly, and parents invest more in club than they do in the high school.
Money.
Yeah,
so
they're paying. They feel
paying.
obligated that, look, if I'm paying, she's going. You know what I mean? Or
they want a return on their investment. They want 100%. If they're gonna pay $3,000 for a club volleyball season, they're not gonna miss
Correct
5 out of the 9 tournaments to
Hell
play.
No.
So
they feel like they threw their money away. That is what I mean. It starts at the youth level because I coach my son's
Coach lives it. Coach lives it on a daily basis.
And everything creeps into everything else. Every season creeps into everything else. Like I have kids that are really good football players for me that, I'm not kidding when I say this, have played a baseball game before they come to the afternoon football game. And I'm like, how did they even do that? So like I this year was just like fall baseball was too much for my kid. It was like, this is just too much. Like, I don't, I don't, that is a big issue that starts at the youth level that travels, no pun intended, but literally travels with them all the way through to high school. And parents have a very, very difficult time managing it. So like, for example, I use baseball as the example. In the case with football, they make this really good club, right? They're not playing on a local club, but they're playing on this kid happens to be a really good baseball player. And now they spend even more money because they're traveling and whatever their whole thing is, because, they get all the money up front on that standpoint. And now you're right. They feel like the parent feels like, if I don't go to this, I just spent X thousands of dollars. You know what I mean? Like,
That's right.
I like to teach. This is what I do all the time. And now it's youth kids, and I know the parents more, so I use my like little methods on that. When they come out, I just came from. I said, well, it's good that you came to our game, because as mad as your baseball coach, the baseball coach would have been, I would have been way madder if you didn't show up for a football game in football season. You know what I mean?
No doubt.
It'd be like, if you didn't show up, let's say 7-on-7 in the spring, if you didn't, because you were playing baseball, you were in baseball season, I would be very understanding of that, because baseball to me,
that's baseball
take
season.
Precedent in the spring. Not that you can't play club sports or what basketball, what, but that would take precedent in the spring. So if there was a conflict, you choose baseball. But that doesn't happen, and I know exactly what you're talking about. They end up not choosing the sport that's in season for their club sport, and I think a lot of that is 100%. Well, 100%. The clubs, they are operating a business. They're like, hey, we have these kids here, we have these kids here. Yes, some of them do a great job of developing kids, no doubt about it. I'm sure you have basketball players that play AAU. Some play for great clubs, maybe some don't. But you like the ones that do a great job. But I do think that one of the tough things in high school, I'm curious your thoughts on this. One of the tough things in high school is you guys are very limited in the fact, and it's similar in New Jersey. So especially as a head coach, you couldn't go and say, in most states, I don't know if Alabama allows it or not, but if you said, I'm going to have my team play AAU in the spring, let's say, right? And you were controlling that team, that would be an infraction probably within your state. And I actually, in the old days, I 100% agree. When I grew up, like it made perfect sense. AAU wasn't a big deal. Club wasn't a big deal.
Right.
You didn't have all these outside people really involved. If they did have a club, it was usually someone you knew, really. It was in your town or something, right?
Or it was for a very selective group, Dave, right? Like it was the cream of the crop, right?
Like they were super, super elite, right?
100%.
But what has happened now is there's a club on every corner. Like I live in a town of 70,000 people. I can't tell you how many baseball clubs there are. If my son wants to play in this club next spring, he has a club to go to, right? So,
they all have the name
Elite. Yeah.
No, actually, those are my favorite TikTok videos where they're like, all you gotta do is put national and elite at the end, then you got a great club. But what I think, those videos make me laugh. Actually, those videos are actually important. I actually think those videos are pretty important. So parents start to really understand that, like, it's not that big a deal. Like, come on. But my point is that if they allowed high school coaches a little more leeway to be able to work with their athletes outside of their season and modernize what this is. I'm not saying I have the answer of how much it should be, but there should be some leeway, and I'm using an example like, hey, 4 weeks out of the spring, you could coach them in AAU or whatever, right? So you have a window of time, that you could work with them that allows you to then say, you know what, if you're playing softball in the spring, I'm going to structure your games and your tournaments as much as I can around it. You're still going to get work in. Maybe I'm not even heading it, like actually coaching it, but I put an assistant in place, but I'm heading the program, right? And I'm making sure it's in line with what we want, whatever the philosophy is. And I think that part, and this is nationwide, I think high school coaches, this is why high school coaches, a lot of them struggle in the long run with a lot of these things because they're pulled in a lot of different directions because of it. And I think if you allowed them a little more control over the whole entire year, I think, this is my opinion, I think that they would do a much better job in figuring out who I want to run my club team in the spring. Even if you don't want to run it, great. You wanted the season off. You probably should have a season off, right? Or
Sure.
coach another sport. You want to coach it, but you still are the manager of the program. You still have control and if your kids want to play with you now, maybe you have an elite kid that's good enough to play at EYBL one year. Okay, that
Right.
kid's gone, but the other kids, the majority of kids are with you. And
Yeah.
I
So
think
what-
that would help coaches. I don't know. I'm curious your thoughts.
So what we actually do, what I actually did, and we started it this year. So 2 years ago was my first year here, and I dedicated everything to my school team. And then last year during the springtime, because when you're in the metropolitan areas, your Birminghams and your Huntsvilles and those kind of things, they have a ton of options for different sports. In this area, we're on the coast, and and we don't even have a lower radius because the Gulf is our lower radius. So everything for us is double going north, east, or west. And so for us, if our kids played in Pensacola or played in Mobile, I mean, you're looking at an hour drive one way to get to those places, and that's not easy all the time. So we started a little AAU travel program here. And so, like, what we did was I'm allowed to coach any kid that's not currently in my program. So, what my wife and I did was we put a little fifth and sixth grade team together with just Orange Beach kids, and we played in 5 tournaments in the spring, and we're allowed to coach them. Then last year we didn't have enough for a high school team. We had a middle school team, so we had a seventh and eighth grade team, and they played eighth grade, and we played in all the same tournaments. We had a dad, who used to coach, and he doesn't work here, but if he works here, he can't coach, but
Right.
he used to coach he used to be a teacher. Now he's on
Right.
something else. And so he takes that team. So then this next year, we'll have a high school group. We'll play all of our high school kids together. We'll have a middle school group, and then my wife and I will coach our fifth and sixth graders. And so we'll have 3 teams next year. We'll play in 5 tournaments. We usually play local for 4 of them, and then one of them we're going to either go to Birmingham or go somewhere so they can stay overnight and all that stuff. And I did a TikTok the other day about it was called recruiting players. And I wanted to get the little hook about, oh, here's a coach talking about recruiting kids from other schools. And my whole hook was, you have to recruit the kids in your own school, because like
Hell
right now, I coach my 5th and 6th grade kids last year. There's never been anything for them to ever do from a competitive travel standpoint outside of just local rec. They played, they loved it. I've got kids like right now that are 5th and 6th grade, like my 7th graders that were 6th graders last year, 1,000 times ahead of where they would have been. And I've got 5th graders are going to be 6th graders, and they're just like, Coach, when are we starting up our swoosh program? We can't wait, blah, 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 and all that stuff. And again, I'm not trying to be like I want all of our school programs here at Orange Beach to be successful, but I'm the girls basketball coach, and I want to try to win the best athletes, the best girl
Right.
athletes when they're in 4th, 5th, and 6th
Yeah.
grade. If I wait till 7th grade, there might be another coach or another parent or whatever that's going to win that kid. And so, like right now, I can tell you right now, like I've got some 6th graders that are down at our elementary school, and they are chomping at the bit to be a girls basketball player in our middle school program, and they're still a whole year away. And so
Right.
it's like what you said. It's like I'm not gonna just gamble on waiting for these kids to get here. I go to
Right.
rec. I'll have a
Absolutely.
I'll have a practice till, I'll have all day of school. We'll practice till 6 o'clock. And then, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, our rec teams will play. And my wife and I'll go down there. We'll sit front and center. We'll watch our little teams play. We'll go over. We'll high five all of them. We'll take a picture with them. We'll put them on our Mako social media,
Right.
and all that stuff. And we take shirts down to them. Like, we will get shirts made. And then we take girls basketball shirts down to them and give them to them at the end of the year and all that stuff. And the elementary teachers are like, we can't get these kids to take these shirts off. They want to wear them every single day. And
Well, you
so
want to
we're
create
just
that buzz, that buy-in, right? And you want to
exactly,
start it really, really young.
exactly,
Look, regardless of sport, when you take a new
100%.
job at a high school, one of the first questions in that interview, or should be, what's the youth structure like? What access do
100%.
I have to
Absolutely.
that youth program? How do I get involved with them? And we've only seen it, right? Dave and we talk about this. It go younger. When it, back in our day, it was, look, 7th grade, 8th grade, you talk to the middle school. That has
Right.
now progressed down to 5th, 4th, 3rd,
No,
right?
no
And
doubt.
one of the best things that Dave did, right, when we started our 7-on-7 club team, was we took that from it mainly being a 15-year-old thing, an 18-year-old thing. We dropped that thing down to 8th grade, or I'm sorry, so 8-year-olds. I mean, we
Right.
started young, and
Right.
it was kind of like a tester that first year of how many other clubs would now form. How much younger participation could we get? Man, we're
Right.
in like year 4, and the tournaments that fill up the are our 8U, 9U, 10U, like those slots. Every program now has it because they've now
Right.
seen that, look, this is a retention thing. If I
Sure.
play for Boardwalk Beast as an 8-year-old,
Right.
guess what? As long as I like it, which I think we do a damn good job, and our coaches do a really good job of, hey, trust this process. You can now be a beast all the way up until you're an 18U guy.
Right.
9U, 10U, 11, 12. I mean, the whole gamut, where now these kids are in a structured process program, right, of development. This is
Right.
where you're at as an 8. This is where you're at as a 9. 10, and you just continue through. And as a high school guy, I want that. I want those kids to look, mom and dad, the same thing. I'll spend $50 on a hoodie because I'm going to
Right.
wear it for 6 years. Why? Because I'm going to be in the same program with the same structure. I know the development, comes through. That's the best programs that win on a
Right.
consistent basis. Anybody can win one year wonders, all
and
that
you know
kind of
what else
stuff.
we invited? So this is we invited other, like, so if you're like from a town, like let's say Orange Beach, and you wanted to leverage the resources of our club but keep your team together,
Team
you can do
together.
that. So there are kids that want to, that
Sure.
want to play on, a team of all like top tier kids, but there are also dads of, they're going to go to this high school and
Right.
they don't want to put together a whole club. Cool.
Right.
We'll let you wear your colors. It just has beats, like, and it just has beats on it. And
We
then
just take that
we let
logo
you-
and
we enter
smack it
you in
into
the
their colors and
tournaments.
go. Yeah.
You can coach your kids.
Sure.
And like, we're trying to invite, and then, like, I'm friends with, like, where Derek coaches at, their youth program has their own club, right? And they enter in our tournaments, right? And I see those guys. So I said, like, we always say, like, whatever structure works best for you, but like, we welcome that. Like, you don't have to be in just because you're in the elite part of it or the better player part of it. You could
Right.
also be with your own group of kids and
Sure.
just work with your kids and leverage the structure. And then that allows a coach to not have to worry about all these other things like buying uniform, things that a
Right.
lot of times
Right.
might stop.
We handle
Stop
everything
dad
that's
from
annoying
starting
to
your club.
coaches, right?
Yes.
Right. Like we
Absolutely.
take it basically, and what we do, and Dave does a really great job of managing it, right? Like, hey man, just coach, right? Like
Sure.
this is, you can just come here and you can
kids.
coach your
Help
kids.
your kids.
We'll handle getting you into tournaments, we'll handle uniforms, we'll handle fundraising, right? All that. Just come coach your kids and enjoy that part of
all
it.
the nonsense
right?
part of it.
Yeah, basically. Right.
No,
Like, look,
and look,
it's a wild time, but for them to now just get back to, and that's where they can further develop those personal relationships with their players, because hey, now focus on you, man. I don't have to worry about, like, where time we're going to be there. Like, we tell you,
Right,
so
right.
and I think that improves the relationship part. And now the parents, wow, this guy's investing time not only, you know, in quote football season, but here we are in the spring. And we're also very open with like, man, like if you play other sports, that's great. Go do that. And if you can make it to the game on time, if you can get back, that's okay too, right? Like we want you to understand
We're
what
out of
commitment
season,
is.
right?
Right.
Sure.
This is not football season. And ultimately, this is something extra that you're doing because you like it and because you want to be here. You're not
Right.
being force fed something. Right. And that's kind of, you know, it's a different outlook to it and a different approach to it. But I mean, man, it has been like wildfire with, you know, all of those things. And then no, like you see those teams now in the fall when it is their season. Hey man, they're a little ahead because look, they've run those plays all spring, or they've developed those other skills, or hey, I know coach outside of his quote season. And
Right.
it's been awesome. And the expansion of it. You know, obviously we know AAU basketball and all of those types of things have always been a part of this. And we touched on it a little bit. Now though, with, you know, and we talk about this all the time is, you know, when we were growing up, not everybody played sports. Not everybody there was nobody, you know, you didn't just play because you had nothing else to do. So you played a sport that didn't play. Now with AAU, rec leagues, you know what I mean? Like everything has a level to it where it just seems like the involvement, hey, I want my kid to do something, throw him in this league. Or well, this is a highly competitive league. And sometimes that works totally backwards when, you know, you're just trying to get a kid involved. And it's hard for younger kids to understand the difference between a rec league where, hey, we're going out here and we're going to, you know, play some ball, or AAU where it used to be like, hey, it don't matter if that guy on the bench right now, like he's pretty freaking good player, right? Like it was the best of the best or a higher level. How have you seen that, Coach? I don't know. I mean, I think it's a national thing. Is it bigger in your area? How do you see that in terms of just like, hey, I'm on the team because I want to wear a varsity jacket and be in the picture, or hey, I'm on this team because I want to win and I want to play in college. So how have you seen that kind of within your area?
Yeah. So
or do you
coach,
see it? Is it a thing? I don't know.
Yeah. So I'll go back to the AAU stuff. So I coached elite level AAU. My daughter is a senior at Rhodes College, which is a small little academic school in Memphis, and she played basketball for me all the way up when she was 5 years old, and so we got into the Under Armour, which is very similar to EYBL. It's a shoe league. You know, they only take 40 teams throughout the country. I coached with a group called All Alabama. We were the only school in Alabama that was there. And so we played, you know, up at Boo Williams. We played at Spooky Nook. We played at the Pacer Center in Indianapolis.
Oh.
We went all over the country and played.
Spooky Nook, Dave. We've been there. Oh,
that's
baby.
right.
We've been there multiple times. That's like youth tournament, like Graceland is what it is.
No doubt. So I coach at that level. And, you know, and again, like there's a difference between coaching travel, you know, like you guys were, I call them professional coaches. Like you were paid to coach. Like you guys ran high school programs and all those types of things. And so when I coached my AAU, like I was a professional coach, and a lot of the people that I was coaching against, a guy had an insurance business, a guy was a fireman, a guy was whatever. And so they didn't understand, you know, the gravity of a kid being, you know, having a softball tournament and still wanting to come and play on a Sunday, you know, in an AAU tournament. And they would hold that against them. Or, you know, we'd have a practice, you know, on a Thursday and we had a tournament and the kid had to run a cross country meet or run a track meet and couldn't be there. And it's like, just like what you said, just like you made mention in your program, it's like, I'm not going to penalize a kid for trying to get better in a sport outside their sports season when they are at their high school competing, in softball, in
Yep.
soccer, in track, or whatever they're doing. And so that's where I think, you guys are always going to be successful because your understanding of what your organization is trying to do. And when you think that your organization is bigger than anything else that's going on in that kid's life,
Absolutely.
you're going to start losing parents, you're going to start losing kids, and nobody's going to
Shit,
want to come play for
We-
you.
We tell kids too. One of the things
Coach,
that
great,
I'm
great,
curious how
great
you
point.
feel. Curious how you feel on this, but we tell, like, if like occasionally we'll get someone, they'll say, "Oh, you guys don't go to enough national tournaments." You know what I mean? You probably hear this stuff, and we're like, listen, if we don't go to enough things nationally for you, or we don't travel enough for you, there's plenty of places that focus solely on that. This is what we focus on, right? Like,
100%.
we choose these things. Our objective is our overall objective is to get you a little bit better prepared for your season, right? Get you a little bit better in the spring and help you understand certain concepts. That's what our goal is. If you're thinking you're going to play for our club and we're going to practice 7 days a week, that's we're not that club either, right?
That's right.
So there's certain things, but you will find, like I would say, like you'll find we run things the right way. We try to make sure we can accommodate the kids as best as we can, the families as best we can. And our goal is to make you come out of there like, hey, I got a little bit better this spring. I competed at a higher level than maybe what I do in high school on a normal basis.
Right.
And I feel a little bit more ready. And that's the
Correct.
goal. Now, if you think by show, like we would say, like if you think that you need to show up at all these national tournaments and to get recruited, and you think, hey, we're not doing that, we're not the place for you. There are places that do that. And we've lost kids over the years because we take that stance. We're like, but I said, if you stay with us, if you decide to stay with it, and it's up to you, like we're not going to chase you, you'll have a good experience out of the program.
100%.
90, I would say 95% of the kids have that good experience, right? Every once in a while, obviously, somebody doesn't have a good experience. Sometimes it's out of your control. So maybe a coach makes a mistake or something.
Sure.
But for the overwhelming majority of people, you'll have it. And that's what we want you. You're better. And then you come out of your next season, you'll be like, wow, I was better this year. I think this might have helped me. Then maybe you're willing to come back. And for the guys that like what you're doing, I love that you have your investment in the younger levels. It's gonna pay dividends in the high school
100%.
program. But forget about even that. The fact that we talked about the investment in the girls, from the get-go, right? Like that's one of the things that you do so well, and it's why you're so successful in all the places you've been. But what it is like, hey, there's not enough coaches doing what you're doing, meaning coming down, getting to see the recreation kids. I mean, I see it in football all the time. Coaches take it for granted. These kids are going to come to my high school. And then they're upset because they go to maybe a private school, or they don't go to their school, or they go to a different high school, right? Because nowadays you can pay to go to a different high school too sometimes.
Right.
So they go to a different high school, and they're like, why wouldn't that kid just be part of our program? It's like, well, they don't even know you. They don't know you.
Right.
You have to come down and meet them. Nobody's saying you have to sit there every single weekend, but you do need to spend some time down there. If you expect why should they come to you if you don't invest in them?
100%.
And I think that's a big part of it that, I would say our generation of coaches definitely probably understand for the most part. The next generation is having to learn that, and maybe they don't know it as innately as well because it wasn't a thing for them as much. People didn't come down to them as much as they used to. And as coaches, I think it's important to be able to do that, because what ends up happening is those kids know that you exist. They know that you are interested in who they are, and they tell their friends. Like I remember
they
when
all talk.
I remember when I was a kid.
No doubt.
I loved when the high school. I didn't even know whether my high school coach was a good coach or not. I just knew he came down to see me. I had no idea whether he was good or not. I just knew, hey, I wanted to go play there because I knew who the high school coach was. He knew who I was, right?
Yeah.
And I think that was a big deal. It's a lot of that gets lost, and I think a lot of coaches are way too concerned with the fact that, does this parent like me or not like me, what they're saying in the background. And I've always said this for years, and every once in a while it's gotten me in trouble. But like, I'm not going to be concerned with what the parents think about me. I have a job to do, right? And my job is to do the best job that I can. If I worried about what every person says behind me and take it seriously, and I always say this to administrators, I'm like, why are you listening to the parent in the stands yelling? Like, of
It's
course,
what it is.
What do parents do? I'm a parent, you like, if your kid isn't getting the ball as much as you think he should get the ball, you probably think in your head, oh, I'd like him to get the ball more. I mean, but you don't listen to that parent saying it, because every parent probably, or the majority of them, think that way. It's not that they're maliciously intended. They just want their kid to have the opportunity. It's not that. And as the coach, your job is to figure out how to put the best product on the field, to help the most kids, and to be the best team that you can be, especially in high school where winning is important.
God.
Is important. So, that's not the individual parent's job. The individual parent is looking only at their kid,
That's right.
Yeah.
And it's
really, really, and it's really hard too, Dave, right? Like, to piggyback on that, right? Like,
and there's nothing wrong with it, by the way, for parents.
And that's okay. Right. Because as a parent, that child is your that's all that matters, right? And with football, it's really difficult because 11 guys on a field, my kid can only do his best, right, with the help of others.
It's that way in every sport. I've listened to my friend, a good friend of mine, played football with me in high school. He works at a huge conference, a college conference, Division I conference, and I listen to him when and obviously he knows this. He works with ADs and college coaches and the highest level. And I listen to how he talks when he feels like maybe his kid isn't getting the opportunity. He'll call me up and say, what do you think? And I'm like, well, maybe they just don't feel that he fit, whatever reason is the fit. Figure out if he likes that sport that much and is willing to stay in it, great. Maybe there's another sport for him. And actually, and he's actually done that with some of his kids, and it's worked out really. Like, his kid who was not as talented, he actually right from the get-go was trying to pick out sports for him because he didn't think he would make some of the primary sports. And the kid's like a starter in some of these secondary kind of sports and loves it. You know what I mean? So I think that's an important thing. But coaches have to be invested. I think what you do is phenomenal, because those girls get to know you. They get to know your wife. It's a family thing too. It's not just you as the coach. Your wife's involved. You know what I mean?
Side note: the fact that coach's assistant is his wife and they're still together, that's fucking unbelievable. That's a podcast. That's a book.
Yes, that is a podcast.
I don't know how this shit,
I could tell you some stories. I could tell you some stories, but we'll run out of time. And I also know my wife was going to watch us, so I don't want to. I don't want to be in hot water.
Maybe the next part is having her on about what it's like to be your assistant. I mean, because that's on another level. I mean, look, you started the podcast with, football is really hard because not the kids, it's the adults. Holy shit. Like, for you to be in, and I think that's something that's worth touching on as well, right? The importance of your assistant coaches with those younger levels to buy into that, right? And look, I'm very fortunate to work for a guy who trusts me, and it's only year 2 of us being together, but it's kind of what hit us off in the interview is your vision for that sub-varsity JV program in terms of how much of a factor and how important that really is when most guys only focus on the varsity, right? But through that development with your junior varsity team, right? It's just so pivotal if you want to build a winning program, a sustainable winning
No doubt.
program. That is the lifeline. Your freshman coach, your JV coach, those guys are so important with every aspect of your program. Just, everything under the sun, from the X's and O's part into executing what they do on the varsity, the buy-in part of, hey, the head coach message, and as younger, like just relaying that and into the players, and a head coach says something and maybe not everybody was, but assistant now and go hammer that point home. They're buying into that, right? Like even the role, especially with football, as a sub varsity player or a JV player, like you're mainly you're a punching bag every week,
right,
for 4 days during practice, running the scout plays, running offenses, and doing things that you don't even doing as part of what game day is. But you're so pivotal for that role, to play that other team, to give those guys the right look that they need to. That buy-in, it's really hard. You're playing JV games where you're literally, some guys, they're drawing it up on the bus as you go, right? And then expecting these guys to go out and give the best performance when they've been a shield all week, right? Or a tackling dummy.
right.
I think that part of it is so pivotal. I'm interested, to hear your thoughts on that. How, especially, I mean, look, you inserted, your wife, like, so that to me is just incredible in itself. How do you look at that as a key factor into how you've developed your programs to be sustainable and on such a high level?
So it's funny. I did another TikTok the other day. When I was at Spain Park for 14 years. And when I first got there, again, the program wasn't in great shape. So I spent my first year basically just working with my high school program, going down, as much as I could with my middle school. After year 2, I went down and I dove down into our middle school. And I had a coach down there, Jennifer Jolly, who had 2 twin daughters that were the same age as mine was. And so we made an instant connection, and she was 100% in lockstep with me in what I wanted to do and build my program. Now, I was part of the Hoover City school system, and most of the middle schools didn't have to be in lockstep with their high school. It was
right.
It was the middle school was a separate entity, and we had at that time a principal that was like, if the middle school coach wants to run their program this way, I'm going to support them. And if they don't want to support the high school coach, I'm not going to make them. Well, fortunately for me, her and I got on the same page. And I mean, like her and I were literally coaching seventh grade through 12th grade. And same drills, same terminology, same expectations, all those types of things. And then when those kids became 9th graders, like it was plug and play. Like there was no reteaching, there was no nothing. It was like, all right, I knew what their role was going to be on the team. I knew what, and even some of the kids that were in, like my 7th graders, like I would plug them in and play them on some JV games on nights the middle school wasn't playing. And my 8th graders, if they were good, I would plug them in and play them on some varsity nights if I thought they could handle that.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just for about 10 years there, it was awesome. And like I said, in 2017, we lost in overtime and finished runner up. 2018, we won a state championship. And then 2020, we won a state championship. And all because of the work that we put in through that entire program. Well, then her daughters were going to be seniors, and they both were softball players. And she's like, Coach, I think I'm going to step away for a little bit. She stepped away. They hired 2 other people in that spot. And both of those people said, we don't want Mike Chase any part of our middle school program. And for 2 years, Like they wouldn't even let me sit on the bench during games. Like I would come to games and I would sit at a chair down at the end of end of the gym with the janitor, and the janitor be like, I don't know why the hell they won't let you come down there and coach them. They don't know what they're doing, and all that
Listen, those
stuff.
guys always know best because they see it all, right? The custodial staff
100%.
always the first
So-
guys to get a T-shirt when we get new gear. I'll tell you that much, right? Like that's
So my wife was teaching at another school, and she was coaching at a middle school, and she was coaching girls basketball, and my wife is running all of my stuff at another school and beating the dog out of the school that I coach at, that I've been coaching at for 12 years, and they won't let our kids shoot the three. They won't let our kids do this. They're trying to run this, and it was totally counterproductive to what we've been doing. And in turn, like when this job opened up, like that was a huge factor, because then what happened was I was at a school that had started and had a really good girls flag football program, had a really good volleyball program, had a really good softball program, and I was not able to have contact with those kids. In turn, I wasn't able to create the relationships I had had in years past, and I was losing my best kid. She was going and just playing flag football. I was losing another kid to volleyball, where I had never lost those kids. And so that whole being in lockstep with the people that have influence over your program. And that's why when I came down here, the first thing I asked the principal, aside whether you're not going to give my wife a job, the other thing was do I have total control of my program from kindergarten to 12th grade? And he was like, you got it. And I said, okay, that's a done deal for me, because I knew
Right.
how important it was to be able to have that, especially a school that we have to share athletes. Like I gotta win them as early as I possibly can. I can't lose them.
Absolutely. That is the whole key, I think, to success at the high school level, is to be able to have relationship with the parents, the kids, and control the program to be able to drive it the way that you need to, because ultimately you end up being judged by that. And if it's like you said, if it's like a random situation, I mean, there's no way that you could have consistency the way that you would like to have consistency. And when you have that, it allows you to develop the program, and you always know what's coming up. Like, if you have a light year, what you have to do if you have a light class for some reason. But the truth is that what ends up happening is you don't have very many light classes because of that, because you have a feeder program, and you've developed those relationships to know the pieces that you're looking to have every single year, and they're gonna the vast majority of them are gonna come to you because you have that relationship with them. And I think that's always a big deal. I always used to also say, like, even when a kid said, let's say they were hell bent on going to a different school, or a private school or something like that. I'm like, listen, you always got a spot here if you want to come back. Like
Sure.
never burn a bridge.
Yeah, like, because a lot of times kids go to like maybe a program like that. I don't know if it's as big a deal in Alabama as it is in New Jersey, but in New Jersey it happens a lot. And they'll go there and they don't make the team, right? And they still want to play.
Right.
Well, they're good enough to play for you. Like they could be a star on your team, but like, on this, I don't know, nationally ranked team or a team ranked in the top 20, maybe they couldn't, right? And,
right.
We see it a lot.
They when they know, I can't tell you how many times they've had kids reach out and be like, hey, I'm thinking of coming back. I'm doing okay, but I'm not playing as much. Hey, it's up to you. Like, if you want to come back, you're always welcome here. You know what I mean? So I think that's where that relationship comes. So if a kid does, for some reason, they've been through your program, they know, hey, you're always there to support them. And then every once in a while you pick up a guy a girl in your case that you didn't, that was gone and comes back and is like, wow, and I think those relationships are key. it's awesome what you're doing. I mean, obviously, to me, it's no coincidence your success, obviously, because of how you invest in the kids and your philosophy. So what is always it's great to have got coaches like you on the podcast, because I think young coaches get confused by all the things that are out there in social media, like maybe too focused on scheme or too focused on having the very best player. Like I try to I'm coaching my son's group. I try to, anytime if a guy asks me, if they don't ask me, but I coached high school for a long time and I've been a head coach at that level, and I was an NFL agent and worked with the top players. I ran showcases around the country for high school kids, worked with every single, but at one point, a third of the NFL kind of came through our program when they were young. And if they ask me, I just tell them, like, everybody wants to win. Everybody wants to win.
Mhm.
There's nobody that likes the feeling. Well, at least me, competitors don't like the feeling of losing a game. I hate it more than anything. Okay. There's no worse feeling than you lose. Like I need at least an hour to decompress, just to drive around for me. Like, that's just how I am. Like, I'm so wired. And I just need to, I've now, like, win or lose, I tell my son to go, even win or lose now. I tell my son to go when my wife go home, because I don't want to say something that I will regret, even if we win. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I just don't want to say something I would regret an hour later when I'm calm.
Right.
So, but it's one of those things where we can't allow the fact that we want to win every game to cloud how we put the process together.
Sure.
And I think that's the thing, and the investment in the kids. Like, it has to be a process, and it has to be an investment in the kids. And listen, you're going to win a lot because of that. But if we shortcut it, and I think a lot of, especially young coaches, I could get this player to come over here, and, like, you don't know his back, you don't know if he would fit in your program. You know what I mean? And
Right.
so
Sometimes it's the wrong fit for a locker room.
right.
No doubt. No doubt.
And I think you're seeing
blows
that a
up your
lot now.
season. Your whole season gets blown up because of it. Yeah.
I think you see that a lot more now, right? With the transfer portal in college football, where guys are so, like,
Absolutely.
let's just, hey, we're going to go grab this guy. We're going to go grab that. Look, you look at a couple years ago, an undefeated Florida State team, and now they go into the portal and just remake their roster with that. And then
Right.
you look at a very disappointing season, because sometimes those guys that you're bringing in, dude, it's a battle in a different type of atmosphere, right? And it's sometimes it's more about the right pieces, right, than it is about the right player, right? Always coach the to me, it's, you got to coach the kid, not the player, right? Like,
Right.
I need to know. It's why the old school cookie cutter way of coaching, where, hey, we treat everybody the same. No, you don't. That's bullshit, right? You can't. It's impossible. And if you know your players, it's probably a little easier in basketball to know the ins and outs of your players' lives. What is there? I mean, look, Dave, right? We had a coach on last week. He visits in-house, in-home, high school football coach in Oklahoma, visits his freshman kids, goes in-house visits in the spring of their freshman year, and has meetings with
by that.
whatever their makeup is, mom, dad,
Right.
only mom, whatever, grandparent. He goes in and sits in that house and says, hey, this is what it's going to be for the next 3 years of your son's life. Here's it.
That's awesome.
And to me, I
Awesome.
thought that was obviously, look, when I look at it here in Jersey, it'd be very difficult as a public school guy to do that. There's so much
Sure.
red tape when it comes to all that. But dude, if you could do that, right? And for me, a guy that really, like I said, coaches the kid, not the player, right? Like,
Sure.
that's great. You can run and jump, and can score me a million touchdowns, right? But, like, I need to know that, like, if I walk into your house, like, dude, like, it's only mom, and you don't have a washer or dryer, or just all of those things that could be for each
100%.
individual. And going back to your point, when kids know that you care more about who they are for the most part anyway, right?
Sure.
Like when you know, and when you're invested in them as a person and not just, number 57 or, I think they just have a different little bit of a switch, man. And they're willing to do and to listen and to have more of that blind faith in like, hey, coach wants me to be a good person, not just a good football player. Right? Because for most of us, the guys we coach are only, they're only there. They're not going to play college ball. This isn't their life. They want to have a nice, fun high school experience to go and tell their friends the next 70 years of their lives. Right. So go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, coach.
Well, we, one of the things that I tell our kids is, there's two Coach Chases. All right. There's the Coach Chase that you see at breakfast duty in the morning, and I'm going to talk to them and cut up with them and ask them how their day is and all that stuff. There's before practice, probably not as much before practice, but there's after practice Coach Chase. And then there's that 2.5 hours where we practice. And I'm like, look, like my job as a coach and my job is to make you as good of a basketball player and as good a basketball team as possible. I said, if I was a restaurant owner, I said, you would be a hostess, you'd be a server, you'd be a cook, you'd be a dishwasher, you'd be whatever. And, I said, so let's separate, the time that I am Coach Chase and we are working versus when it's our time. Like we have the kids over, we karaoke at our house. We have the kids over, we watch movies at our house. We have Thanksgiving, or we call it Friendsgiving. And we do all these things outside of, we normally go on at least 1 to 2 trips a year. We're going to go up to Birmingham, play in a tournament. And it's actually a Saturday, Monday, Tuesday, where we have an off day on Sunday. So we'll do a Top Golf, or we'll do a bowling competition, or we'll have a Uno tournaments, and we'll do all of those types of things. And those are the times that they get to be, that I get to bond with them, connect with them, and all that stuff. But they know that from 2:45 to 5:30, like that's a different Coach Chase. That's the Coach Chase that needs you to box out. That's the Coach Chase that needs you to dive on the floor. That's the Coach Chase that needs you to know where you're supposed to go on this inbounds play. And I said, look, I coach my daughter and my son. I said, there's nobody in my life there's nobody in anybody's life that a parent loves more than their own children. Correct. I said, but when my daughter was 5 or whether my daughter was 18 and she was playing basketball for me, she was a basketball player in my program. Yes, she was my daughter, but she was not absolved from, not switching a screen or being in the wrong place or not guarding the right person and all that stuff. And I said, but when the game was over, I went back to loving her like she was the most important person in my life. And I said, as long as, and girls have a hard time differentiating with that more than boys. They think that, a poor performance or not doing something right on the court is personal. And so we really, really, really try to do a great job of trying to separate the Coach Chase from, game time or practice time versus afterwards. And so I try to, when they come in the gym, before practice, I shout their name out. We do a lot of touches. So we try to do a lot of high fives, and all that stuff. And it's like, okay, hey, we got 8 minutes on the clock. Let's get your mind right. Let's get ready, blah, blah, blah. I need you today. I need you for these next 2 hours, these next 2.5 hours, and that kind of stuff. And then when it's over, it's like back to high fiving. Hey, you guys have a good night. See you in the morning. Make sure you get your homework done, blah, 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 and all that stuff. And being very, like deliberate about that, really helps them understand, when it's who I am and what I'm trying to do when I'm trying to do that.
No doubt about it. I think that is the biggest thing is that that understanding that when we're at practice, we're in a game, there's a certain expectation level of what the coach is going to be like, what the player is going to be like. And then when you're outside of that, you're a human being and you have a personality, and all those kind of things. And I think you're right. I actually found that when I coached girls, that was the hardest thing was that there is a separation and that it's okay that separation exists and that you're slightly different. Like it's like friends that adult friends that I coach their kids and stuff, they always say like, they're like, man, when you're coaching football and versus when, we're just hanging out, it's two different people. I'm like, well, it requires two different kinds of mentality. It's the same individual, but it requires a different mentality
Correct.
coaching versus
Correct.
hanging out or, talking about sport and some of it mixes in. There are times when it mixes in, but
No
there
doubt.
are times when it's all about business, and there's times when you have an expectation. And I agree with you, because if you want someone to get the very best out of themselves, becoming the very best that you can be is not an easy thing. And there are drivers to that, and there are elements that have to be pushed, because it's the majority of people, it's not their natural instinct to put pedal to the metal all the time. That's what a coach is there for, to help you understand how to put pedal to the metal and to push you to get there. And I think that's I think that's awesome of how you help them understand that, because that really is that, to me, that's coaching. And I think that's also a big thing that the younger generation of coaches need to understand, that like your job is not to be their buddy while you're coaching them. You know what I mean?
I mean, in life, there are lines in all aspects of your life. There are certain things, I've been in education for over 30 years. I've had principals that, are my bosses, principals, superintendents, assistant principals, who, hey, you're a professional, we're going to let you do your job, blah, 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 and all that stuff. And then there's other ones that they micromanage everything. They don't let you make decisions. They don't whatever. It's my job. I can't just say, well, I only want to function under this style. No, it's my job to adjust to that. And so what these kids have to understand is like, you don't just get to act however you want to act just because that's what you like. And so what I'm trying to teach them is, I tell my kids all the time. I said every year they start a new school year and they have 7 or 8 new teachers. And I said go in. I said listen to what the teacher says the first week of school.
Yeah.
Some teachers are going to say, I need you in your seat. Don't get up. You can't go to the bathroom. I don't want you talking. Keep your phone, blah, 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 and all that stuff. And I said, if they say that 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 10 times in the first week, well, then it's your job to go in and not do those things. Now, you may go into your second period class and the kids are roaming around. They're throwing, we used to the paper wads across the thing to try to make a basket in the trash can, got their phones out and all that stuff, getting off topic, talking and all that stuff. And if that's okay in their class, then you function in that class. But you don't get to pick and choose how you want to function, or you're gonna suffer the consequences of what that teacher. And so, it's kind of the same thing. It's like, you're going to get a job, you're going to go try to get into college, you're going to have all of these aspects in life, and you are going to have to abide by whatever the rules and regulations are of what those people are, or you ain't going to get a job, or you ain't going to have what you want, basically.
No doubt about it. So well said. And I think that's an important thing, and parents need to understand that as well. and that helps the process so everyone can develop to their maximum ability. Coach, I can't thank you enough for coming on. We've definitely taken
Taking
a
up
lot
way
of
too
your
much. I
time.
apologize, Coach.
Hey.
I apologize.
It's almost basketball season. October 20th is official practice day for all the teams in Alabama. And then we play our first game November 6th. So super excited to get this season kicked off.
Very cool, Coach. What's your TikTok handle for people that because you're on there now?
I think it's Put Me in Coach. I don't know, something like that. I can't even think of it off the top of my head.
I might be able to get it real quick, but look, either way, Coach, I really appreciate you taking the time. Learned a bunch. It's always nice to connect with guys and network with coaches about we love seeing this stuff where guys are doing things the right way around the country and in different sports and whatnot. Coach, your TikTok, if anybody wants to follow Coach, it's at put me in 24. It's PUT_me_in_coach24. Hopefully we can get you to 5,000 followers real soon, Coach, because listen, the content's excellent. So I appreciate
That'd be awesome.
Good luck with everything, Coach. If we can ever do anything, please reach out. Let us know, man. Thank you for taking the time. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate you.
All right. Have a great day, Coach.
Bye.
Bye. Great stuff, man. Wow. He was awesome.
Still can't get over it. Could you imagine with your wife? God damn.
Well, I wouldn't be the head coach in that case.
Well, there you go with that one. What? Dude, awesome things too, right? Like, and it sounds like the buy-in from the guys above him and the admin, like with what's going on in that school, man, that's really cool. You know what I mean? And obviously, I don't know that area. You know that area. It's a cool type of area, right? Kind of right on the border of Florida. Area. Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, look, he didn't even touch on it too. He has a son who is a sophomore at Michigan. So he was up there this weekend, and he actually is a former colleague of Michigan OC Chip Lindsey when he was in the high school ranks. So that guy was coaching football. He was coaching basketball. So they had a really good relationship. So always cool to see guys that transition, into those different roles within coaching itself, from football to basketball, girls, boys, like all that stuff. But look, some of this, a lot of the same, things go into it in terms of being successful and all those kind of, but I think he's got a really good thing going there, man. And it's going to be interesting to see how it builds that thing and go. A lot of freaking wins, dude. Holy hell.
Oh yeah. No. 500 and what was it? 90 or 60 something? When I looked it up, I was just like, that's a lot of wins.
What is God, he's like, hey, I'll just send you a document that I share or whatever when I do this. I looked at it, I was like, oh my God, okay.
No, there's no doubt that's definitely that's a lot of wins. He's a heck of a coach and he's a heck of a leader, and pretty cool.
Those girls are definitely better for it. Yep. So we're back tomorrow with the assistant athletic director for Tulsa football.
Yes, I saw that. Yes, that's cool. That'll be fun. That'll be really good, man. We're rolling. We're rolling. That was a good one. I look forward to tomorrow. We'll talk Tulsa football. See what's going on there.
And go follow him on TikTok, man, because it's so funny to see, right? Like, and that's kind of like the thing too. Like the older school coaches now that dabble into that TikTok world. I mean, some of it's really, really like it's really good content, dude. It's funny. It's
real. It's real.
Willing to put himself out there, right? Like that's really tough for a lot of people in general, So I think it's good stuff, man. But all right, guys, we'll see you tomorrow.
Yep.